So what do you think is going to happen in the economy in the next 2 to 6 years? What do you see? What do you see? Do you look that far ahead and kind of try to plan for it? And if so, what are you doing to plan for it?
Yeah, so honestly, there's so many different components in here, and I feel like I'm gonna try to be careful with my answer. With the whole economy, number one thing that I always tell people is that we can't control the uncontrollable. Let's focus on what we can control, which is our skill set, which is our network, right? And obviously the vision of our business, right? Try to focus on that as much as possible, but pivot along the way. So in the next 5 to 6, 7 years, the truth is like if I can predict the market, I wouldn't be here talking about that, right? So it's very difficult to do that. But at the same time, I do firmly believe that the real estate market wouldn't drop the way it did back in 2008, right? Because so many people locked their interest in for 30 years in the US. In Canada, we have a tons of immigration coming into Canada. Last year, we had a little over 1 million immigrants plus international students coming in here. We only had 225,000 units built across the entire country. So the demand and supply is so imbalanced that I don't see real estate going down. And people who are coming in here, they all have some sort of financial resource. The government is not that stupid.
Right.
So, I mean, like people can argue different points, but the moment that they're allowing people in here, like you gotta have some sort of financial backing, right? So yeah. I don't see it breaking, dipping the way it did back in 2008. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of fear in today's market. So if we can stretch it to a 5-year term, and in Canada, we're unable to solve the inventory issue, right? Because the cost of construction, the cost of the labor is still continuing to rise. Then if we're playing 5-year game, we just need to figure out how to get to the next 1 to 2 years. And the rest, I think, is going to be okay. Okay. Now, in the US, there's also multiple different strategies. If you're in states where you're losing your people, for example, California, right? My strategy will be completely different. I might actually choose to go to Texas, Tennessee, or like Florida, depending on obviously your risk tolerance, right? Your strategy might be slightly different.
In this market, what is your favorite strategy for cash flow right now? In terms of like a beginner investor looking to become financially free through real estate. Obviously, because it's my big, it's what I'm promoting. It's what I really believe in is co-living, the shared housing strategy. But what's your take on that?
Okay. Creating cash flow in real estate is not going to happen in today's market. 7% interest rate. You're not going to find any single family or even duplex that cash flows, in my opinion, right? The only way to do that is through active approach. Right, you can do wholesaling, you can do flipping, you can do co-living, you can do Airbnb. All those are active approach. And I think people, the idea of doing everything passive or building a passive machine, that is gone. Right, it might come back once the interest rates are dropping, and then we're seeing a different market. Maybe that's going to come back in a year or two, or later. Right, but for today's market, you have to be taking some active approach, because if you don't draw the active income in, $200-300 cash flow from a rental property is still not going to be you won't be able to sustain yourself, right? So my favorite strategy right now, like I'm actually going fully on the active approach again at this moment. So we're trying to obviously figure out how to build a deal sourcing machine, right? And the reason why I'm really teaching people about this type of approach is because now I'm building multiple different funnels from our students, the members from our program. Once they learn what we do and they start slowly build that up, they always come back to us and say, hey, Ping or Andrew, hey, listen, can you help me assess this deal? If we see that it's a good deal, one of the two things can happen. You see that we pick it up or we just invest with the students and try to operate that project. Right. So we're constantly doing the active approach, and that's why coaching became our focus this year, to really teach people exactly what we have been doing in the past 10 years, right? Learn our model so that you can duplicate and so that you can implement. And once you can implement, then we can duplicate our business model and to try to turn our business model from here all the way to here.
So when you say active approach, you're basically, I was interviewing on this podcast. I interviewed an episode that just went live by David Green, who's one of the hosts of Bigger Pockets. And he was saying that one of his strategies to find deals that have the highest cash flow. He goes, the deals that have the highest cash flow usually have like what he called a higher barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And I think that's similar to what you're saying with like, hey, it has to be something that's like not everybody can just go buy and be super hands off. So for you, it sounds like co-living would fall into that because there's more moving parts. You know, it's almost like an Airbnb. There's more moving parts. There's more active things you have to take care of. But I mean, you still could hire. There are companies out there, my company being one of those, that will manage a co-living property for you. You know, Pad Split is a company that will manage now granted, they're going to take their percentage of the cash flow, a pretty good chunk of the cash flow.
Sure.
But if you could find a way to maybe take some of those active approaches and make them more passive, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so because your initial question was if I were the beginner, right? If you're the beginner, you kind of don't have that choice. You have to be active. Now, the moment that we're talking about a little bit more passive approach, utilizing other people's company's resource, I would imagine this person's qualification or financial resource is a lot better than the first scenario that we discussed.
Yeah.
In that case, so in that case, the moment that you get into a more like intermediate investor type of stage, right? Now your focus is all about scaling your portfolio. Okay, which means you cannot be caught up with a daily operation, right? Any average person, I think, can manage maybe like 10 properties without any issue. The moment that it gets to like 15 voices, tenants, right, requests coming in here, it gets pretty heavy. So now you have to either build your operation or you can outsource the operation and just focus on the acquisition, right? So that's the scaling point is where things gets interesting because everybody's financial resource and network is so different. Right. And there's a comfort level, right? Some people really enjoy building a business like you and I, but there's going to be people who just want to kind of focus on their full-time job and put it aside. This is going to be a 5 to 10 year term for them to really invest into real estate and reap all the benefit afterwards, right? So for those people, then delegate as much as possible. Get your time back because your time is not in property management, project management. Your time is in your full-time job and spending time with your family, right? So to answer your question, it still depends on everybody's situation, but obviously everybody's end goal, like where they will feel like, okay, I finally achieved my goal, right? And based on that, you work backwards and see what makes sense to you.